Evil Dead Rise. Set almost entirely in one apartment, a mother gets possessed by the spirits of the evil Necronomicon. Her children then have to fight her off, and a load of blood and guts ensue. So guys, Evil Dead as a whole is very special to me, because as a 13-year-old kid, it full-blown inspired me. I have mentioned this before in some of my earlier videos. As a 13-year-old kid, I was inspired to make little films every now and again. But what I did not mention in those videos is that Evil Dead started this whole thing. The original Evil Dead was the first time I had ever heard of young filmmakers making low-budget movies. I was inspired by it, especially Sam Raimi's journey, going from Evil Dead to fucking Spider-Man, holy hell. And I've loved him and Bruce Campbell ever since. Another way Evil Dead is special to me is how the franchise started over 40 years ago. And not only is it nice that Hollywood didn't milk this franchise for every penny, like we don't have an army of these like the Freddys, the Jasons, the Michaels, and the Chuckies, but also every single one of the Evil Dead entries are good. The sequels, the TV show, the remake, even most of the video games are decent in my eyes. And now we got Evil Dead Rise. And yeah, I could still safely say that the Evil Dead franchise just might be the most consistent horror franchise in the history of movies. Now before going into this film, I wondered what Evil Dead Rise would be. Is it a sequel to the originals, or is it a sequel to the remake? Is it another remake? Well, from what I can tell, it's another remake, which is okay, but it is extremely odd to be at the same time. I mean, it's only been 10 years since the last remake, and making this a sequel to that film would have worked better for me, but there we go. So, if you're unfamiliar with Evil Dead, you may be confused by this film. It's more than just people simply getting possessed, because the possessed people cannot be stopped unless you dismember them. So that means that what follows tends to be a load of extreme violence and a load of immature gags. We got that here, and as an Evil Dead fan, it worked perfectly. The effects looked absolutely fantastic, most of them are practical, and the sound design is also fantastic. The cinema speakers were just screeching at me with all of these awesome sound effects. I'd be surprised if it doesn't win awards by the end of the year. I think it's that goddamn good. And as familiar as it all is, it's also unique. Being trapped in an apartment instead of a cabin in the woods was badass and worked a lot better than I expected. And apart from Ash having a sister in the original Evil Dead, which you could have easily missed, the Evil Dead films don't usually deal with family members getting possessed. This one does. As a result, I felt the loss every single time someone got possessed. Kids are there watching their mother get possessed, knowing that they're never going to get her back. Someone's sister gets possessed. Children get possessed. It's quite horrible. That little girl in the film, it doesn't matter if she lives or dies. Either way, she loses. There's not enough therapy on the planet that can help her deal with all the things she witnesses. And all of them give solid performances, but the one who you could tell was just having the most fun was Alyssa Sutherland. Her sound design, her makeup, her performance, the whole thing just worked so well, and I was gripped every single time she was on the screen.
Mom? Mommy's with the maggots now.
Now the midpoint did put me off a bit. There wasn't much story during the midpoint, and the characters just weren't deep enough to carry the whole thing by themselves. Not that much was going on, just a few set pieces. Again, the characters weren't that deep, and I did want to get to know them more. And the jump scares? They're not as bad as other horror films, but damn, can we please just stop putting them in these films? It got so annoying. But once you make it past all of that, you get to the climax. Now, no spoilers, but that ending was just absolutely fantastic. The effects were fantastic, the tensions were high. Oh, I loved it. I was so close to cheering in the cinema. I just didn't want to piss off everyone who was sat down next to me. I've never seen Evil Dead do that before. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen Evil Dead do, and I have a feeling they were heavily inspired by Last of Us 2. But that's all I'm going to say about it for now. Just check it out for yourselves. Now, speaking of the climax, yeah, that climax was great. But the biggest problem I had with this whole film is that there is an intro and outro. No, just a complete waste of time. Completely unnecessary. That ending did slightly ruin the awesome climax that happened just before, but there we go. So, in the end, Evil Dead Rise is nothing particularly original, but if you're an Evil Dead fan like me, you won't care. I just had so much fun with this. It feels so much like Evil Dead and complements the franchise very well, but at the same time, it does so many new things here that I didn't even know I wanted Evil Dead to do until I saw it. Like, there may be some thin characters and pacing problems, and yes, the intro and outro were just completely frivolous, but it's still fun, and the climax is just too freaking cool. Seriously, Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and Rob Tapper should all be so freaking proud, man. They were all in their early 20s when they worked on the original Evil Dead. And not only are we still talking about that classic 4 decades later, but we're still getting solid entries. I'm going to give Evil Dead Rise a 7.5 out of 10. But please keep this in mind, guys. Evil Dead Rise feels very similar to the 2013 remake of Evil Dead. And as much as I liked that remake, I never learned to truly love it. My thoughts on that film are pretty much the same as Evil Dead Rise. So if you happen to love that 2013 remake, you're probably going to love this film. Don't pay attention to my rating. Just check this film out for yourself. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay jiggy. The badger appreciates you.